And so as you allow these things to work in your brain that you don't have an ability to measure otherwise, your spaceship starts to move forward when you can get those brain waves to be in a more optimal frequency area, and that's the way they start to work on ADHD through biofeedback.
Welcome to Quadrants of Mental Health. I am your host, Dr. AJ, affectionately known as Dr. AJ Johnson, but you can just call me AJ. I'm good with that. All right, we're back to Quadrants of Mental Health. I have as my special guest Mr. Charlie Inch. He's an attorney in the Richmond area practicing criminal law. For Quadrants of Mental Health, please share, like, subscribe, comment. You know what you need to do. Now, you're just trying to build a platform here, and hopefully this is informative. And we have shows already done, so you can reach me on Apple Music and Spotify. And we're building out a YouTube channel, so that's why we're saying subscribe, like, hit the button. Now, Charlie, we're back. I want to focus a little bit more on now. This process for you is it relatively new? I know it's a part of your journey. But how has the legal profession received you? And when you talk to people about this process and what you're trying to do, what's some of the feedback you've gotten from the legal community? These are your other attorneys and maybe judges you've maybe talked to. What kind of feedback have you gotten?
I've had tremendously successful results when it comes to using what I referred to before as 3 and 4 of how do you defend a case, and that's my client today is not the same person they were yesterday when they did those facts, or this is what you need to know about my client to know that they're not the beast or demon that you believe they would have to do that thing.
Yes.
And so if you can, trauma-informed practice has 6 tenets. Try not to re-traumatize is the first main thing. Mm-hmm. And then you say you need to give them safety, give them a voice and a choice, give them transparency, give them empowerment, and partner with them. Mm-hmm. I mean, those are the tenets of trauma-informed care.
Partner with, you're talking about with your client.
With the client.
Okay.
One thing that really unsettled me years and years and years ago was I was walking down a particular court in the area. I don't want to say where it was, and I heard what I knew to be a court-appointed lawyer. I don't remember who it was. I just remember them saying to their defendant, "I'm your court-appointed lawyer, not your court-appointed friend." Mm. And part of me chuckled at the concept.
Yes.
But I've gone through some difficulties myself. I don't want to air out all my skeletons, but I've gone through circumstances where I need lawyers. Mm-hmm. And when I was sitting in that chair looking at the person that is typically me, mm-hmm. And I think this is why lawyers are such bad clients, is the vulnerability is immense.
Yes.
And then how do you Yeah. And then how do you tell them all of your deepest, darkest secrets and truly trust that when you say that to them that they will respect the fact that it's the deepest, darkest secret and a danger to the case.
Right.
And not open their mouth in even an accidental way to release that secret in a way that's going to harm me.
Harm you.
And
even not just necessarily now, but later.
Right. Right. And then the added part of the problem, I think, is with using lawyers locally, and I think you still can, but the additional fear is we are all colleagues.
Yes.
Right? And so how do I know that I'm not going to become the brunt of a joke because of something that I'm, and I'm not saying that there are not trustworthy lawyers in town. I've used them, but that's the fear, right?
That's the fear.
The fear is that this is, I want you to help me out of this situation. I don't want to have the same kind of betrayals here that I've experienced in my life.
All your life.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So the challenge is, how do you get, what's the response you've gotten from utilizing the trauma base and them not understanding a lot of it? So you have to educate them and teach them some things too. So what is the feedback you've gotten from them?
So I've gotten really good results with judges, and I've gotten a mixed bag of results or a mixed bag of communication or response from the legal community. Everything from, Charlie, people don't want to know that you're going to care about their feelings. They just want to know you're going to win. Right?
Yeah.
So you get that. You see, that's kind of the old. This is war.
Yeah, this is war. This is business.
Right.
Let's make this money.
Yeah, but if you read Sun Tzu Art of War, I mean, everything is a battlefield, and so if you can understand this and you can win the battle before you ever need to fight
Before
it,
you need to fight
then
it.
you can win the war, and you don't have to worry about all those. Much
Yeah.
of the, and especially in criminal defense. Think about this, and all of everyone that talks to me about how much do you win? That's what everyone wants.
Yeah,
How
that's
much
what
do
I
you
want to
win?
know.
How bad would our criminal justice system, and it's got flaws, I'm not saying it's perfect, but how bad would it need to be for every case that I represent to be found not guilty because the facts are insufficient, right? Now, I win a tremendous amount of cases,
Right.
but do we think that judges don't slightly believe police officers more than they believe the average? I mean, every single one of us has gotten into a speeding ticket, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, every single one of us said I wasn't really doing it, or this is what you need to know, that
Right.
even though I was doing it, that you should let it pass, right?
Right.
When we're in the hot, but speeding, like even something as simple as speeding, and then the story always goes, that officer didn't know what he was doing, he didn't know. But I mean, it's when we all are put in the exact same similar circumstance, we all act the exact same similar way.
Exactly.
And
even
so,
attorneys.
Even attorneys, and sometimes more so, because we do not deal with vulnerability well. We are the one in charge.
Right.
Right? And then the other thing that we do is we mistake effect with control. And I did that when I first went to therapy. I went to a CBT counselor in 2017. And so you've asked me a couple questions. You would ask me a couple questions about how did I go with the journey, and then you also asked how it was received.
Yes.
So let me address how it's received. And the lawyer mixed bag, as I've already spoken. The other thing is that criminal defense is a mixed bag of people that are accused of, one, being criminals, and two, many instances being accused of being addicts.
Yes.
Which are two really shameful identities. No one, even people that think people that are the criminals, no one that has the identity of criminal thinks of that themselves. Not a single one. And they'll do everything they can to keep that label from being attached to them, even though the rest of the community or rest of the culture would refer to them as that.
Oh yeah.
It's
the sad part about it is for a lifetime.
For a lifetime.
They don't think about, okay, something happened when I was 17.
Right.
And they don't know what led up to that.
Right.
I give an example. I have a friend of mine. Sure, he tells this story all the time. His name is Hassan Zarif. He committed murder at 17. He was so high, he don't even remember doing it. And he did 17 years in jail. And his journey to getting his rights restored, and now he's working in the prisons as a pastor.
Oh yeah.
He's turned his whole life around. So he didn't let that one incident define him for a lifetime. He was angry and bitter when he first got in. He said he went through his challenges. But as he grew and became the person he is today, drug-free, married, just living a different life. Now, some people will say, shake the finger at him and say, look what you did, but not look what you've become. Look what you've made out of yourself. Right. And a lot of times we don't think about those things. And I know people who have felony convictions, hard for them to get jobs because something that happened 20 years ago. I wrote a bad check. Right. I was writing bad checks when I was 18, 19 years old. I did 2 years in jail. Oh, you're a criminal. Right. Really? Right. So we just cause that person to relive that trauma, and think now they begin to think something's wrong with me versus I did something wrong.
Well, I think
separate things.
I think that starts very, very early.
Yes.
Very, very early, because I am who I think you think I am.
Yes.
And you think that I'm a criminal. Right. And a criminal is a bad person. Just think about how we just get to talk about addiction right now. Listen to Atomic Habit. Everything is a habit.
Everything.
Everything. And we are built for habits.
Yeah.
The thing is whether or not that habit, and we're all running from pain, right? That's another human trait. It's a life trait. You run from pain. Mm-hmm. The coronavirus. Do you know the reason why they suspect that the coronavirus with each iteration is going to become less and less deadly? Mm-hmm. Is because the virus wants to mutate and stay alive. Well, if you kill your host, you can't. And I'm not sure. I don't want us to. I have not vetted that. So if we need to get in, but that was something that the article we were talking about, and why do we believe it's always going to mutate into something that's less deadly, and that seems to be what philosophy is. But it works well, maybe not well in the current um, culture, but it works well as an idea that we life runs from pain.
Yes.
And if the trauma that you experience is the pain, and the identity you have with that trauma, as far as a shameful identity, I am weak.
Yes.
Right. I didn't have the ability to stop that person from sexually touching me that way. I am weak. I didn't have this. I wasn't able to keep them from beating up my mom. Right. I was weak. I was told that I wasn't enough. Right. My parents divorced because of me.
Because of me.
You know, all of these things and these memories that are really painful. And we don't stop to look at the unconscious thought about it. What do we think that it defines about ourselves because it happened?
Not just the unconscious thought, but the unconscious behavior pattern that comes, that's born out.
Right. So then we get that stress level risen, and then the amygdala picks up, and that's your fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mechanism. Your prefrontal cortex has your executive brain function and your response based on foreseeable consequences, right? And so we talk about react or respond, or respond. Which one is the nerve that is, when you put your hand on a hot plate, it's a reaction to pull your hand off. It's not a response. It's a nervous reaction. Right. And so we are having this. I think that we exist on 4 planes: physiological, and cognitive, emotional, and then there's a spiritual plane. And I think each one of those existences, and I've got a diagram I call interpersonal string theory.
Okay.
But a diagram, each one of those existences has the same Venn diagram with other circle on top. Knowledge, access, and control are the original 3 Venn diagrams, and then intimacy. And so we need to have knowledge, access, control, and intimacy, and build those connections with those existences out. Emotion is not generated on its own. Emotion is generated off of a cognitive belief or thought or value.
That's emotions are value based.
Right, because they come from the cognitive value. I think she loves me. She's not going to cheat.
Therefore, I feel.
But now she cheated, and now, right, and she's not going to. So therefore, I am loved, and I feel loved.
Right.
But then you get back to, and this is not for everybody. This is for some people. But I think she cheated, but I thought she loved me. Right. And now there's that friction of belief system in the cognitive that now creates that emotion that's negative, right? Because it's almost like a violation of that.
Therefore, I trust no one.
Right, and then and then it goes into the physiological, because that's what we call the biofeedback. Right. And then we use that when we talk about biofeedback and neurofeedback. Right. Quick short story about something we were talking about earlier about identity, and never thinking about ourselves as that thing. Right. We talked about it in a couple things: addiction, criminal. And here's how it works. I, in my trauma journey, personal growth, started reaching out to this group of professionals that you talk about with this team, right? One of the things I'd heard about from Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score, is not just eye movement desensitivity recalibration, which is a type of talk therapy involving, cross-hemispherical brain work, usually with the eyes, but you can do it with other things. The other thing that he was talking about, which is a successful trauma treatment, is neurofeedback. We mentioned it earlier when I said that that they claim that they can cure 90% cure rate of ADHD, because ADHD on a physiological perspective is a brainwave problem. Right. Your theta waves are too high, which is the theta wave area of the brain that talks about relaxation. When you're in the shower and you're washing your hair, that's when you have that eureka moment, right? Is because you're in theta brainwave function. You and I are in beta wave right now, which is the frequency above theta, which is like social interaction, discourse, and it's a very specific area of the brain. ADHD is that the theta brainwave, that brain, when it's in theta, it's in too high. It's not in the optimal frequency, and when it's in beta, the frequency that it's using is too low. It's not an optimal frequency. And so neurofeedback has this ability to actually monitor those particular brain waves and then give you a biofeedback screen. So it's like a race car, or it's a rocket ship. And you can't do it purposefully. Like you have to let your body settle into it. And the body is trained to get positive rewards, and it wants to win the race, right? And so as you allow these things to work in your brain that you don't have an ability to measure otherwise, your spaceship starts to move forward when you can get those brain waves to be in a more optimal frequency area, and that's the way they start to work on on ADHD through biofeedback.
You know, one of my challenges with even with dealing with ADHD and being in the field as long as I have, a lot of times we have clinicians who are quick to diagnose
Right.
based on data supplied to them by mom or dad,
Right.
and we give this child this diagnosis.
Right.
Whereas what I found when you slow that whole process down, and I do believe people have ADHD, but a lot of times when you slow that process down, you will see that trauma is the basis of it.
Right.
And I'll give you an example. Had a client, he was homeless, right? Him and his father living in the car. All their stuff was in the car that they were able to get. He would get shelters. Every now and then he would get to a shelter. Every now and then he would get to a shelter. And 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock every day at school, he was like this. He was all over the place. And they said, oh, he's ADHD. No, this kid is thinking about where he's going to sleep at. No shower, can't eat, all these other things going on in his mind. Of course he's going to be racing, you know? But if you understand the trauma, a lot of times if you eliminate the trauma, guess what? The behaviors go away. You know? That's the challenge. And we are... Now, hold on. We're going to take a slight break and we'll be back with our next segment.